Hello and welcome to Brands Hatch for the fourth race in Lockdown 3 Sam Pearce Motorsport CV19 Clio Esport Series. And our championship leaders coming into this race is Rob Lewis in P1 with 94, Graham Crowhurst in P2 with 92, Matt, despite not running at Alton last time out, in P3 with 80 points, but once again not racing here, and whether or not he'll be able to retain that championship he's defending will be interesting to see. In P4, Ed with 73, and then really close with Kiwi, Russ, Pro-Am Racing, Sam Pearce and Alex Neville with 67, 57, 55 and 50 points, and then a big gap back to Paul in P9 with 15. And this qualifying has proven to be very close, just 0.3 seconds between our top 8 runners on a very tight circuit, and it's Rob Lewis who came out in P1 and Graham in P2 in exactly the same order that they are in our championship. The Ginger Wrecking Ball himself, Tom Starkey, has nipped up to P3 with a great performance, having had not great form this season. Scott, Ed, Kiwi, Russ, Alex and Sam all from P4 down to P8. That's where the real action and interest is happening, where it's very, very tight as well as at the top. So great racing throughout the grid, a tight circuit with difficult to overtake and similar lap times. Let's see what happens. And they're off. And Alex seems to be glitching and has jumped from the back out to the front, so we'll be interested to see where he returns. Who's going to get down into T1 first? And it does look like Tom Starkey's had a little nudge there on, and Alex has gone straight into our leader, and then he's taken out Graham as well as the Ginger Wrecking Ball. So an amazing start to this race and carnage already. So a massive crash at the start there with people starting to recover, and Tom seems to have gone wide, having a few control issues. And out front it is Pro-Am Scott Thompson in the blue Clio. Sam Pearce seems to be going wide. Is he having a few issues as well? But Scott's managed to make the most of that really tricky start and has got out in front with Kiwi, Russ in P2 and our championship leader in P3. So Rob Lewis P3, and in the background we have Ed, followed by Alex, followed by Paul. So Paul's managed to find his way up onto P2 on lap 2, having a little go at Alex there. Alex has gone wide. Is he going to be able to squeeze it in? He hasn't got the best line coming into this corner now, coming into Graham Hill, the fast left-hander. He's gone a little bit sideways, and Alex has hit the curb and he's gone wide, and he's hit Paul and taken him out as well. So Alex has been involved in even more incidents on the second lap, unfortunately. I think the first one is down to his internet connection and glitching. There's nothing to do with that. But out front, it's still our leader, Scott, as they come round on this fast and furious lap. Very short. And Rob Lewis has managed to sit into P2 with Kiwi Russ closing him down in P3. And looks like Ed's up to P4, so Ed's doing really well. And as I say that, the commentator's cursor's hit and he's gone wide at paddock, an easy mistake to make. Rob settling in quite nicely in P2, but he does have Russ behind him, and we know that Russ is really keen to get past people and won't take any prisoners as they come down into Graham Hill Pend once again. Nice and neat from those two guys. Ed running just a little bit wide, but I think he's avoided any penalties there on time. They come through the fast left-hander at Surtees and into the double right-hander that takes us onto Clearways and the start-finish straight again. So Russ has closed up onto the back of Rob, and all three cars now bunching up together. So it is going to be a close race at the front, but catching is one thing and passing is another. These guys are really similar on pace. As Russ looks like he's going to have a little look up the inside and decides better of it. Tucks back in. Our series leader goes wide, which has enabled Russ to catch up onto his back bumper. Is he going to try and make a move up into Druids? No, they go in order. Oh, he is. So Rob's gone a little bit wide on the exit there. So now Williams, but he has got the best line on the way into Graham Hill, the left-hander. Nice clean racing from Russ there, tucking it back in, and they're going to have another go. But while all this is going on, Ed is still hanging on in the background, so it'll be interesting to see how he manages to get on the back of this group and make it a four-way battle for the front. So a little lock-up from our race leader there, Scott Thompson. Nose to tail, three abreast. and they come round again for another lap, and it is literally like this when you're driving as well. An absolute challenge to get round this circuit. 20 minutes of fast and furious racing. As our championship leader in P2 here, Rob Lewis, looked like he was going to go around the outside, but is he going to come up the inside as they come into Druids? Scott covers off the inside quite nicely. One positive move. That does mean that Rob's got a better angle on the way in, and they are nose to tail. And once again, so it's very close out the front. Great racing from these guys. No mistakes so far. As we're on board now with Kiwi Russ coming out of clearways onto the start-finish straight with Rob Lewis in front of him. And Scott out front. Heavy braking, turning it in. A little bit of lost momentum there from Russ maybe. And Rob Lewis closing up on the back again, and Scott takes the defence. Is that enabled Russ to have a little look round the outside? It's going to be tricky to make that move stick. No, he hasn't managed to make it stick, but all this time Ed is closing up on the back, and so is the Ginger Wrecking Ball Tom Starkey, who's closing up on this group as well. So nose to tail at the front. Nick Night Sky Watcher seems to be off to the side there. I don't know if he's had an issue or if he's just parking up and getting out of people's way. He wasn't necessarily having a great race down in P14. But is this slowly becoming a 4-car race at the front? It looks like it is, but we know that Ed is good on his lap time, but is he going to be able to have the consistency to get back in the race? So Scott once again crosses the start-finish line, just make a little bit of a gap. And is Russ going to have a look up the inside? No, he tucks back in. Ed's closing all the time, so it is now a 4-car race as Russ goes a little bit wide there. Ed's going to try and make a move. No, he covers off the inside. Ed's going to have to go around the outside, takes the more traditional line, see whether or not he can get the drive down into Graham Hill Bend. No, so as we have seen, it's one thing is catching up, and Rob Lewis goes a little bit wide. I don't know if he's going to incur a time penalty there of maybe a second. We'll find out towards the end of the race. But catching is one thing and getting past is something very different here. So broadly similar on lap times, just 0.3 seconds covering off the top 8, and these guys were in that top 8, so we know they've all got similar pace, as Scott seems to be just making a little bit of a gap for himself, and Rob has got Russ all over his back again. So is this the time that he's going to try and take it up the inside? No, both cars going sideways and Russ hits the inside curb. Is that going to unsettle him and give Ed a chance to run up to the corners? Ed's going to go around the outside. It's very tricky to make a move work there. He hasn't managed to. Great driving from Russ. Very patient there from Ed as well. Good clean driving. And now Rob Lewis is all over the back of Scott. So it's 2 pairs with a slight gap in between our P2 and P3 position. Out front is Scott Thompson in the blue car, with Rob Lewis following him in the red, white and blue car. In your picture there is Russ, Kiwi Russ, in the white car with the Martini inspired livery, and behind him is the Cadbury's guy of, is he made of chocolate? I'm not so sure, but yes, it's Ed who's looking to come up the outside. And Scott goes wide there as they come up. He's lost his P1. Does this mean that Russ is going to be able to get up the inside into P2? A little bit of contact there, pushes him wide as they come down the hill. So now Scott's got the better line for the inside left, and Ed's probably thinking, I fancy a go at this as well, but he's just backed out of it there. It looks like Scott's gone wide there, so he may well pick up a time penalty, but he's got Russell over him. But out in front, leading the race and leading the championship, is Rob Lewis. And looking by the way these are going, as Ed has another little look up the inside. 3 abreast as they go through clearways. This is great racing from each of these drivers. Ed and Russ are going to come down here side by side, with Ed having the better inside line. But is Scott in front of him going to balk him? 3 abreast as they come across the line. Fantastic driving from all of these guys. Graham a little bit further back. Slowly and surely coming back into it. Three abreast again from the guys behind. As Ed is now pushing Scott Thompson. So having been out front for the first part of this race, it does mean that Rob has managed to get away off the front, and Ed's now going to try and put some pressure On to Scott, but Kiwi Russ is never one to give up in the background there as they come through, cocking a rear wheel, very similar to real life. Russ is not going to give up as Nick moves out of the way there. Don't know if he had a problem or if he's just being polite and staying out of the way of everyone. They come across the line, 2 abreast now. Does it look like Ed's going to try and go around the outside? Tucks it back in. Scott's going wide, manages to keep it within the white lines, but that has given Ed the run up the inside, coming into Druids. Is he going to be able to manage to outbrake him? And yes, he's pushed Scott wide. That's put wide, and that's enabled both Ed and Russ to come up the inside. So Scott's gone from P1 to P4, but he's still in this group, and the race is not over yet. So Ed, having had some issues at the start, is now back up into P2, and is he going to be able to track down the leader? But when you've got Kiwi Russ behind you, we know that he's not going to be giving up anytime soon. And he is going to put him under pressure because he will fancy getting higher up on this podium. So 3 abreast between P2, P3, P4. So Ed in the purple and white car, Russ in the white car, and Scott in the blue car as they come across the line again to start another lap. Let's do it all again, shall we? Back up the hill to Druids again. Is it going to be a case of pretty similar to Alton as to mistakes are going to be what changes difference? So Ed's pushed a little bit wide. It's given Russ a run down the outside, but Ed will have the inside coming into Graham Hill, which is the preferred place to be. But Russ may well get a run at him, and that's pushed Ed wide. And there's contact potentially there, I'm not so sure. But now 3 abreast as they come down to Surtees, the far left-hander. I don't think that's going to work. Ed's gone wide, manages to hang on. Russ has got the proper line, and Scott's just caught the back of Russ's car there, and unfortunately it sent him off a little bit. A little bit wide there on the exit, so just a tiny bit of contact. Could have been a lot worse there for Scott, but actually it's made it just through the corner. He's got a little bit of work to do to catch up, but he may be able to do that while the guys in front are squabbling. As Russ has gone wide there, it gets a good run through the corner. Trying to go around the outside. We know that that's tricky. He won't get the drive, but will he get the inside line as they come down into Graham Hill? As they go side by side once again, and Ed goes wide and may well pick up a problem there. But that's a great exit there from Scott, and he's got a run on Kiwi Russ. So the top 4 changing position quite regularly. This 2, 3 and 4, and he's gone past. So he's not out of it, as we said. Great piece of driving there by Scott, and how he's going to be tracking down Ed, but we do know that he's got Russ behind him as well, so really close out the front. As we go around once more for another fast and furious lap. Ed's just got a little bit of a gap, but Scott has got Russ behind him, so is Russ' patience going to run out just as this race gets further and further along? Nicely controlled drift there by Russ as he goes through the fast right-hander of Paddock Hill. Intimidating in real life and very tricky on this game as well. Nose to tail once more as they come down the hill, and creeping up in the background is the beast himself, the beast of Brands Grand Crowhurst, as Ed goes wide up on 2 wheels. That's enabled Scott to come back up the inside with Russ behind him. Is he going to take the place? Yes, he moves through into P2. So Ed's made that mistake, pushing to try and catch our leader. Is he going to have another go back? He gets through the corner really tidily there from not the ideal line. Is that going to give Russ an opportunity to have a good run out of clearways and onto the start-finish straight? At the same time as that, it does look like, as Rob the Bear's coming out of the pit, so he served a drive-through, as Ed's contact into the side of Scott there and sends them both flying, and that was not the best piece of driving there from Ed, I would suggest. He didn't have the patience, and that's meant that Russ has nipped up into P2, but who's he got in front of him? He's got Rob the Bear. So hopefully Rob stays out of the way and doesn't interfere with this. And coming onto the back of Scott Thompson out of nowhere is Graham the Beast. So Graham has come from nowhere, suddenly up into P4, and is pushing for P3. Indeed he does. He does take that place. So from out of nowhere with consistently fast lap times, the monster himself, the beast of Brands, is Graham, has shifted himself up into P3 and is tracking down Kiwi Russ for that P2, but the 2 guys behind him aren't out of it yet as well. Our leader, as we follow him, has kept his nose clean, as he did do at Alton, has got off the front and got away. So not a massive gap, but just enough at this time. There's a lot of ground for people to make up while they've all been dicing. Rob Lewis is doing a great job, a driver of a championship leader, as we see people going wide in the background. This is a fantastic drive by Rob. Well deserved. He is our championship leader, so we know he's incredibly quick and incredibly consistent. He was our pole sitter. He didn't have the greatest of starts, unfortunately, with some issues with some glitching from one of his opponents. And Graham is looking at the championship leader, maybe just squeezing a few more points out from him. And who's coming back into the race as well? Yep. Alex, Kiwi, Russ. As Scott goes wide, has that enabled Graham to come past? It has. So Scott going wide has meant that Graham has got past as well as Ed. So Ed's now back in front of Scott, and championship P2 position. Graham Crowhurst is chasing down Russ, Kiwi Russ, for that P2. Is this going to be damage limitation from his perspective? To see whether or not he can not let Rob Lewis make too many points during the championship. Slowly but surely chipping away at the people in front of him, losing a little bit of time there as he came through. As Rob the Bear just goes a little bit wide, left foot braking for the first time. And Ed's now got to clear Rob the Bear, and so has Scott. So a little bit sideways there from Graham. It doesn't look like he's really taking a lot as Rob the Bear goes wide and enables the two guys in the background to get past. So it doesn't look like Graham's taking lots of time out of Kiwi Russ here. Russ has got a lot of pace in his own right. He is prone to making the mistake. We do know that he doesn't like having the beast behind him. Nobody does. He puts you under great pressure, and he will send it if he gets a chance. And Rob's still out front with Russ in P2. And Graham slowly but surely is taking down much quicker through that corner, using all of the exit curb. Wouldn't want to be taking too much more than that, to be fair. And closing up onto the back of our P2 man, Kiwi Russ. And in the background, Ed and Scott aren't giving up either, so they're having a little bit of a ding-dong. If Scott put in a lot of pressure on Ed, and we do know that he does melt, and that probably that chocolate-coloured car is pretty accurate for him, because he will melt under the slightest amount of heat. As Scott goes up the inside, unfortunately puts two wheels off, and that's allowed Ed to get back. So let's have a look through the field, see how people are getting on. Tom Starkey is still in kind of no man's land. He was unfortunately taken out at the start from that massive incident and hasn't really managed to make time up on the front group, but he also has got quite a bit of gap behind him. Same for Alex as he comes across the start-finish line. And Sam Pearce, recovering from the back, has actually done a great job to get back up into this position. He had a tyre glitch early on, and then after a couple of laps he switched back on. So from stone dead last, it's actually not a bad recovery drive. Johnny T's in the background. Dave of the North is coming across the start screen. So at the back, people were spread out quite a bit. Paul's starting to catch up onto the back of Johnny T, but after unfortunately losing some positions with an incident on lap 2, he's not in the best of positions as we speak. And our guest driver Sam is also a few seconds off the back there. So Dave of the North and Sam having a race of their own down the back. Rob's still nice and clear at the front, but Graham's now right up on the back of Russell. These two, nose to tail. We know what happened at Alton. Russ bottled it, went wide, the beast took him over. He wasn't happy with it, but he managed to get past him. And is this going to be history repeating itself? Very, very close from Graham. Great driving, nice and tidy. Got a better exit up the inside. Is he up the inside? A little bit of contact on the side, but he did have the racing line, and we knew that that's the sort of move that he would pull. So Graham, with a great move, pulls up into P2, not letting this championship get too far away from him. He was in all sorts of trouble at the start, and he's worked his way back up through the field consistently. As he sends it a little bit wide, is that going to give Russ a run at him all the way up to Druids? We know there's been contact between these two already, and Russ is on the inside, so is he going to try and make a move stick? He is, and he has made that move stick, so Russ is not giving up. He's saying to the beast, I'm sorry mate, I'm not putting up with that. With a great move at Druids has come back. So these two going at it, and Russ has gone wide again. He's probably going to get a penalty of some description as he lost any traction. He has, and that's enabled Graham to come back up and also bring Ed up onto the back of Russ. So lots of positions to-ing and fro-ing at the front. Russ has now got Ed for company as they come out of clearways with not much time to go. Ed chasing down P3. He's after this podium. And unfortunately Scott just dropping off the back. So Graham seems to have made a little bit of time to get away. It's only going to be a mistake that's going to bring him back into these guys. So Graham in P2, Russ in P3, and all the while Rob is just going about his business, just neatly going about his business out the front. But he has got to get past these two back markers, and while it's going on behind him, they're more than capable of taking each other out. Russ coming back up onto the back of Graham, with Ed not giving up either, so he's made a few mistakes as he's prone to do, but he is coming back into it, and this is going to be a tight battle right the way through to the end in for P2, P3 and P4. And Russ has made a mistake there on the inside. Unfortunately, that's also a mistake there from Ed, so he isn't necessarily able to capitalise on that, but he's going to get a run at him up to Druids. Does that mean he can close down on the way into Graham Hill? No, Russ has managed to get away with that slight mistake there. Sam in a bit of no man's land out in P8. Alex in P7. I don't think Sam's going to track him down. Ginger Wrecking Ball's got to get past his teammate there. I'm sure he'll do that without any problems. And back out to the front. Kiwi Russ still in front of Ed, but Ed's all over his back. And that's it. The race is complete. So Rob Lewis in P1, having get a great pole position, has managed to hold on to that, got through the melee at the start, and with the champion's drive, yet again with the race win. In P2 is Graham, then Kiwi Russ, then Ed in P4. Scott unfortunately having some impacts, pushing him out, and after a great start and being in contention, just dropped off that leading 4-pack in P5. Sam with a great race up to P6. Alex in P7. Johnny T P8. Paul in P9, and rounding out our top 10 is guest Sam. So whoever's in P11 will jump up. Unfortunately, the second race did not record, and we aren't able to bring you highlights from that. However, I am able to tell you and share with you what the race results were, and absolutely fuming about the fact that the race hasn't recorded is our series organiser for his maiden debut win. Sam Pearce ran away with it at the front, being really good, having a great battle with Rob Lewis, but Rob Lewis, Mr. Consistent at the moment, managed to bring it home in P2. Pro-Am Scott in P3, so after a tricky first race he managed to recover in race 2. Graham in P4, so dropping a few more points but damage limitation. Alex a little bit back to nearer to where he should be, out in the front with P5. Tom with P6. Ed with P7. Dave in P8. Russ in P9 and Paul in P10. So our championship standings after 4 weekends and 8 races, still out in front and extending his lead over Graham ever so slightly, is Rob Lewis with 137 points. Graham in P2 with 124. Ed in P3, just dropping off of these two guys. So maybe, unless there's an issue, the two out front are going to be batting it out for the rest of the season to the Bratmobile Ed. But then it's really close once again. Sam jumping up the table after those great points from the win in P4 with 88. Scott in P5 with 82. Russ immediately behind him with 81. And Matt, because he didn't race, dropping down from P3 in the championship to P7 with 80 points. And Alex with 66. So P4, 5, 6 and 7 are spread by only 8 points at this point. Then a bit of a gap down to Dave with 19 and Paul in P10 with 18. So those guys are batting it out in their own championship. They do seem to be on track quite a lot together. But yeah, out front, Rob Lewis extends his championship lead after a win and a P2, followed by Graham, who recovered really well and didn't get a lot of luck with the reverse grid race, the mixed grid race in P2, and Ed in P3 just dropping off at 94. Hopefully, we'll see our defending champion Matt return next week as we all go to Watkins Glen for 2 races over in the USA. Thanks for listening. And they're off. And Alex seems to be glitching and has jumped from the back out to the front, so we'll be interested to see where he returns. Who's going to get down into T1 first? And it does look like Tom Starkey's had a little nudge there on, and Alex has gone straight into our leader, and then he's taken out Graham as well as the Ginger Wrecking Ball. So amazing start to this race and carnage already.